Okay, second part of chapter 1, Human Anatomy. Okay, now we're going to talk about the skeletal system. The functions of the skeletal system are to one, provide a framework for the body, to protect organs, your heart, your lungs, pancreas, and so forth, and also to store minerals. One mineral that does the body good would be calcium. And also, along with calcium, you have phosphorus, sodium, and stuff like that. Okay. Alright, important fact. There's no such thing as a dry bone, okay? Bones are living organs like the heart, gallbladder, things like that. Okay, why are they living organs? How are they living organs, rather? First of all, they have blood vessels in them, right? Wow. Blood vessels are inside the bones. Think about bone marrow, red bone marrow. Red bone marrow, of course, has a lot of blood inside of it, okay? So, hey, if you can't find any proof, go ahead and cut through a bone marrow. I'm just kidding. Okay, and the bones are also made of cells. So the cells specifically are known as osteocytes. Osteo or osteo, O-S-T-E means bone. S-Y-T-E, site means cell. So really means bone cell. And now, bones also have, believe it or not, they have fat. It's found in the trabecular cavity. Now they have yellow bone marrow, which is found inside of that very same cavity. Okay, so if someone tells you bones are not living organs, you go and give those people three facts like these. Okay, prove them wrong. All right, now speaking of the skeletal system, there are 206 bones in the human body. Again, there are 206 bones in the human body. Of the 206 bones, 80 of them make up what's called the axial skeleton. The axial skeleton, think about axis, especially in the cervical region, the neck region, okay, and helps you to rotate side to side. So if nothing else, think about going side to side with the head. Skull, for example. Okay, so we got the skull, the hyoid, sternum, vertebral column, and thorax. Those three, I'm sorry, those five make up the axial skeleton. Again, remember 80 bones make those up. Okay, now, of the same 206, 126 of those bones make up what's called the appendicular skeleton. Now, when you look at the term appendicular, immediately you think about appendix, right? Appendix is a nice fancy term for a limb in the case of the skeletal muscle. I mean, skeletal system. So, upper and lower extremities. But they also make up, they're also made up by the pelvic girdle and shoulder girdle. Attachments, right? Attachments, appendixes, so you know what appendicular skeleton's about. Okay, now those very same bones are have to be connected. Okay, they have to connect. Um, they have to be connected in some sort of way. We got tissues, right? Okay, it's connective tissue. We got ligaments, tendons, and cartilage. Let's talk about the ligaments. For those who are gym rats, ligaments connect bone to bone. I know you can't see through the green highlight, but they connect bone to bone. One example of a ligament would be the anterior cruciate ligament, which we all know collectively as ACL. That's one of those ligaments that are torn during impact in the game. Example, football, right? Jay Cutler. Okay, so they connect bone to bone. They can tear due to impact in the sport, again, like football. Okay, it doesn't always have to be football, but it's more prevalent in football than basketball, tennis, and stuff like that. All right, and it may require costly reconstructive surgery and physical therapy. So a lot of coaches, a lot of sports team owners do not like to have to shell out a lot of big bucks, especially for their star athletes, though. Okay, so that's why it's better to, and I'm not saying to have an injury, any type of injury is good, but it's better to have tendonitis than to have a full-blown ACL tear. We're speaking of which, tendonitis is the next connective tissue. Now, unlike the ligaments, the connective tissue actually combine bone to muscle, bone to muscle. Okay. As you remember earlier, we were talking about the Golgi tendon organ. The Golgi tendon organ tells us how much resistance, how much tension is placed on the muscle. Well, the tendon has a tiny little entity that will help us to detect tension and resistance. So it's really important. However, that very same connective tissue, that tendon, can be inflamed due to overuse or repetition of movement. Okay, so unlike the ligament, hey, it has to do with impact causing the injury. Now you have repetition of a movement. Now, in the case of track and field, which I used to be in, I kept running with that knee problem. Well, that inflammation of the knee joint was due to constant pounding on the pavement. Okay, so beware of that. Now, what is the treatment? Now, unlike thousands and thousands of dollars to reconstruct a tear, we can just go ahead and put some ice on there, put a bag of ice right on our knee or elbow, and call it a day. So about maybe 5 to 7 minutes, 10 maybe at the max, okay? So rest in ice. Now, finally, cartilage. Cartilage is dense connective tissue. It's found in the skull, the ribs, the nose, and joints, okay? It's definitely dense, very, very thick. However, it can actually be worn. If you think about the vertebral column, if you keep twisting and turning, it can eventually start to fray, can start to be worn out. Okay, and that will also entail surgery as well. Okay, so kind of be careful with that. All right, finally, we're talking about the nervous system. The nervous system is our internal messaging system. Okay, we have our own little courier, we have our own little boss, and we have respondents and people who complain about what's happening. Therefore, it takes the brain to make the decisions, right? Okay, so response to the stimulus. Now, the stimuli could be anything from pain to cold to temperature or just maybe pressure from someone or something, and transmits electrical or chemical information to and from the brain. Now, the nervous system actually is broken into two different types of nervous system. We got the central nervous system, and that has to do with spinal cord and the brain. The spinal cord is like a courier, on the bike, whipping through Wabash, and you're afraid that you might get hit by him or her. And the brain that actually receives the information from the spinal cord, which in turn receives information from the joints and tissue. The peripheral nervous system, however, those are nerves that are actually distal, they're away from the central nervous system. So we're talking about ganglia, we're talking about glial cells. Glial cells are like your adhesive nerve cells. Those are the ones that actually stick to the other nerves just to combine them and to keep them in place. And we also have the nerves of other organs, like the optic nerve, the auditory nerve, things like that. Okay, now I'm going to go back here for a moment. We have two terms here. We got afferent and efferent. So again, afferent and efferent. Let's go back to afferent for a minute. Afferent, which is also known as sensory information, that has to do with information being sent from the joints and tissues all the way to the brain by way of the spinal cord. The spinal cord, again, I mentioned, acts as a messenger, taking that same information from the joints and tissue and send them right to the brain, which in turn will go and process the information. Again, maybe it could be about temperature, it could be about pain, it could just be about stiffness of the joints or even the muscle, and process all the information, and in turn we'll take that same information to that same spinal cord. I only did the arc so you could see the illustration. you take that same spinal cord and sends it right back to those same joints, muscles, and tissue for response. For response. This process is what we call efferent. That's information that's taken from the brain, from the central nervous system, brain and spinal cord together, and right back to the joints, muscles, and tissues from which the information was originated. So again, we have efferent. That's information that's taken from the joints, nerves, and muscles to the central nervous system, and from the central nervous system it will send the information back to the joints, tissues, and muscles for response. Okay, right now those are all the systems. Now I did tell you about the endocrine system. The endocrine system will be covered a little bit from for chapter 2. That has more to do with exercise post I'm sorry, excess post exercise. I can't even talk today. Exercise post exercise oxygen consumption. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask, and have a great day.